this isn't exciting. That's the point. So take the pressure off, relax, and let these old stories guide you gently towards sleep. If you're enjoying these sleep stories, feel free to give us a like or subscribe, but no pressure at all. Now, let's start our journey. If you're wondering why the ancient world's most famous library is forever linked with fiery destruction, let's unravel the enigma of the Library of Alexandria. This was no ordinary book club gathering. Imagine a place where some of the greatest minds congregated, a sprawling intellectual hub that made even the most ambitious Google search look like child's play. The Library of Alexandria wasn't just a building with a few dusty volumes on the shelf. With anywhere between 40,000 and 400,000 scrolls, depending on which ancient gossip you believe, it was the iCloud of the ancient Mediterranean. Now, before you start picturing a quaint little library with a cozy reading corner and a kindly old librarian shushing noisy patrons, stop right there. This was a monument to human curiosity, where the likes of Euclid and Archimedes were rumoured to have scribbled their groundbreaking ideas when they weren't busy inventing mathematics or being drenched in bathtubs, respectively. It was the brainchild of Ptolemy the Soter, a general of Alexander the Great, who apparently decided that conquering the known world wasn't enough. He needed to conquer knowledge itself. The library's mission was simple but audacious: collect all the world's knowledge. Every ship docking at Alexandria's port was subject to the book tax. Any scrolls on board were confiscated, copied, and the originals kept while copies were returned to their stunned owners. Imagine the outrage today if customs decided to keep your Kindle for historical preservation. But back then, this was a power move, and Alexandria quickly became the intellectual epicenter of the ancient world. Despite its legendary reputation, theories about its destruction are as varied as they are dramatic. One of the most popular tales involves Julius Caesar in 48 BCE. According to the story, Caesar found himself caught in a bit of a pickle during his civil war with Pompey. While trying to secure the city, he ordered the ships in the harbour to be set alight. Flames, being notoriously difficult to control, supposedly spread to the library, and, poof, centuries of accumulated knowledge went up in smoke. Classic Caesar, causing trouble even when he was just trying to make a point. But hold your horses, because there's another suspect in the lineup, Theophilus, the Patriarch of Alexandria, who reportedly had a bit of a tantrum in the late 4th century CE. He was on a mission to clean up the city of its pagan influences, and what better way to do so than demolishing a library full of unholy texts? It's the ancient equivalent of clearing your browser history, just with a lot more collateral damage. However, some argue that blaming a single event or person is like trying to pin a worldwide coffee shortage on your local barista. The decline of the library might have been more of a slow burn, pun intended, spread over centuries of neglect, budget cuts, and the general chaos of the ancient world. By the time the Arabs conquered Alexandria in 642 CE, it's possible they were merely sweeping up the ashes of an institution that had already crumbled. The romantic notion of a single event wiping out the library is appealing, sure, but it might not hold water. Consider the logistics. Even a Roman inferno wouldn't have obliterated every scroll, especially those stored in other parts of the city. The truth is likely less cinematic and more about the relentless tide of time eroding away what was once a jewel of human achievement. Yet the legend persists. Why? Because we love a good drama. The idea of the library's vast collections, containing works by Homer, Socrates, and others, vanishing in a fiery apocalypse, is a story that captures the imagination. It's a cautionary tale about the fragility of knowledge and the perils of putting too many scrolls in one basket. The Library of Alexandria stands as a symbol of human ambition and the quest for understanding. It reminds us that knowledge, like any treasure, needs protection. So next time you grumble about backing up your files, take a moment to thank the librarians of Alexandria who started the whole obsessive-compulsive knowledge-saving business. And remember, while the library itself might have vanished into the annals of history, its spirit lives on in every dusty book, every forgotten scroll, and, dare I say, every lost tab on your browser. As we leave behind the smouldering scrolls of Alexandria, let's trade the sea breeze of the Mediterranean for the fever dreams of the Spanish conquistadors. Welcome to the tantalizing tale of El Dorado, the golden city that existed more in the realm of wishful thinking than on any actual map. El Dorado, the ultimate treasure hunt, where the prize was as elusive as a Wi-Fi signal in a medieval castle. The legend of El Dorado began as a whisper in the jungle, a tale spun from the rich oral traditions of the indigenous Muisca people in what is now modern Colombia. But it was the Spanish, ever the opportunists, who turned this into a full-blown frenzy. Picture this, 16th century Europe, where the glitter of gold was enough to make even the most pious monk consider a career change. Spain, fresh from the Reconquista and flush with ambition, was eager to fill its coffers. Enter the conquistadors, those swashbuckling adventurers who saw the New World not as a place of new beginnings, but as a giant ATM. The economic motivations behind these expeditions were as clear as a Caribbean lagoon. Spain was in debt up to its eyeballs, thanks to wars and the ever-extravagant lifestyle of its monarchy. Gold was the lifeline, the golden goose, the cure-all for their financial woes. And so, tales of a city paved in gold, where the king was allegedly dusted head to toe in the stuff during ceremonies, were too tempting to resist. The Spanish crown promised titles, land, and glory to those who could bring back the goods. Spoiler, most came back empty-handed, or not at all. Our story is littered with names like Gonzalo Pizarro and Francisco de Orellana, who in 1541 launched an expedition so poorly planned it makes a high school road trip look like a military campaign. They trekked through the Amazon, a place where everything either bites, stings, or just plain hates you, in search of this mythical city. The journey was a disaster, with starvation and disease claiming more lives than any legendary guardians of gold. Orellana, in a move that redefined cutting your losses, eventually abandoned Pizarro and floated down the river, accidentally discovering the Amazon River instead. So, not a total loss, I guess. The myth of El Dorado wasn't just about a city. It was a fever dream that infected the European psyche. The idea of a land where wealth could be picked up off the ground was intoxicating. But let's not forget the unlucky locals who were on the receiving end of this gold rush. The Spanish approach to diplomacy was akin to a bull in a china shop, except the china shop was the vibrant indigenous cultures and the bull was armed to the teeth. For the indigenous populations, the arrival of the Spanish spelled disaster. Cultures were dismantled, and populations were decimated by violence and disease. The Spanish, driven by greed and backed by the crown's blessing, saw the local peoples as obstacles rather than allies. They bulldozed their way across the continent, often missing the nuanced political landscapes that could have been leveraged into peaceful coexistence. Instead, the Spanish left a path of destruction that would take centuries to mend. Myth-busting time, El Dorado was never a single glittering city. It was more of an evolving myth, shaped by the hopes and greed of those who pursued it. The Muisca ritual of the Golden King, the original seed of the legend, was likely a symbolic act rather than a literal one. In reality, the Muisca used gold for artistic and religious purposes, not as currency. This cultural misunderstanding fueled the Spanish obsession, turning a nugget of truth into a mountain of fantasy. So why does the legend of El Dorado persist? Because, let's face it, human nature is drawn to the idea of a hidden paradise, a jackpot waiting to be discovered. It's the same allure that drives lottery sales and treasure hunts. Who doesn't love a good underdog story where the little guy strikes it rich? But El Dorado also serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of greed and the costs of unchecked ambition. In the end, the search for El Dorado was less about finding a city and more about understanding the lengths to which humans will go for wealth. It's a reflection of our desires and the sometimes destructive paths we take to fulfill them. As we wrap up this chapter, remember that the real treasure wasn't a city of gold, but the lessons learned on the journey. Or, at the very least, the tales of adventure and folly that continue to captivate us centuries later. Stay tuned, because our exploration of ancient secrets isn't over yet. We've got more to unearth, more myths to debunk, and more truths to reveal. Until next time, keep your sense of wonder sharp and your historical skepticism sharper. If we've whetted your appetite for ancient mysteries with libraries and lost cities, strap in for a journey to the Great Wall of China. A marvel of ambition, power, and, let's be honest, a testament to ancient rulers' love of over-the-top construction projects. You might think of it as a giant brick-and-mortar selfie for emperors with severe trust issues. But before you imagine stoic soldiers patrolling a seamless line from the heavens, let's dig into the nitty-gritty of this monumental structure. First things first, the Great Wall isn't a single, unbroken line of defense you can trace with your finger across a map. It's more like a patchwork quilt of walls, trenches, and natural barriers cobbled together over centuries. Think of it as the world's longest game of Connect. The dots, except with a lot more stone and a lot less coherence. The most famous sections we see today were primarily constructed during the Ming dynasty, between the 14th and 17th centuries. This period alone saw the wall stretching over 6,000 kilometers, that's about 3,700 miles for the metric challenged. To put it in perspective, it's like walking from Los Angeles to New York City, and then deciding, hey, let's walk halfway back. Now, the romantic notion of the Great Wall as an impenetrable shield against marauding hordes is the stuff of legend. In reality, it was less about keeping northern invaders like the Mongols out and more about keeping the emperor's own people in check. You see, the wall was as much a political statement as it was a defensive structure. It screamed, "Look at my power," while whispering, "Please don't notice the cracks." Let's talk economics, because building something visible from space isn't exactly cost-effective. The Ming emperors, especially the infamously paranoid Emperor Zhu Di, poured resources into this architectural monstrosity like it was an ancient version of a Kickstarter project with unlimited stretch goals. The financial burden was staggering. We're talking about a workforce of hundreds of thousands, including soldiers, prisoners, and farmers who probably didn't sign up for a summer job in masonry. The cost wasn't just measured in silver, but in human lives. It's estimated that as many as 400,000 workers died during construction, their bodies allegedly used as filler for the wall, though that might be more myth than mortar. Why, you ask, did they keep building? It's simple. When you're an emperor with a god complex, you don't just build a wall, you build a legacy. The wall was an ever-present reminder of imperial power, a colossal "I was here" etched across the landscape. It's the kind of project that says, I'm not just ruling a nation, I'm leaving a mark on the planet. But, spoiler alert, the wall wasn't the foolproof defense they hoped for. The Mongols under Genghis Khan and later his grandson Kublai Khan found ways around it, proving that sometimes brains or horses beat bricks. Oh, and did I mention the Great Wall wasn't always effective in its goal? The wall was breached several times despite its grandeur, because what's the point of a giant stone barrier if your enemy can just bribe a guard or find a conveniently forgotten door? The truth is, the wall was only as strong as the soldiers who manned it, and imperial politics being what they were, loyalty was often a rare commodity. In the grand Game of Thrones that was ancient China, betrayal was as common as rice in a stir-fry. But amidst the harsh realities of its construction and questionable effectiveness, the Great Wall endures as a symbol of China's historical resilience and ingenuity. It's a testament to human tenacity, where ambition met reality, and reality often won. It's a reminder that while we might build walls to protect us, they often end up reflecting our deepest insecurities and fears. And yet, the myth of the Great Wall as an indomitable barrier persists, because who doesn't love a good tale of a heroic defense against the odds? The Great Wall of China is not just a pile of stones, it's a monument to the human spirit, for better or worse. It's about the dreams and delusions of emperors, the sweat and sacrifice of laborers, and the timeless story of a civilization striving to etch its legacy into the earth. As we continue our journey through history's hidden secrets, let's remember that every stone tells a story, even if it's not the one we've been taught to believe. Stay tuned for more truths, more myths, and perhaps a few more laughs as we delve deeper into the past. As we leave the Great Wall's imposing silhouette behind, imagine it's the late 16th century and you're looking to start a new life. You're dreaming big, maybe not skyscraper big, but certainly let's cross an ocean and set up shop in America, big. Enter the Roanoke colony, a tale as mysterious as where all those missing socks go after laundry day. This was England's first attempt at a permanent settlement in the New World, and boy, did it go off the rails faster than a runaway shopping cart. Picture this. It's 1587, and Sir Walter Raleigh, the man with more ambition than logistical sense, has convinced a group of 115 English men, women, and children to establish a colony on Roanoke Island, off the coast of what's now North Carolina. Raleigh, who stayed put in England, left John White in charge, a guy whose resume included maps and art, but not exactly survival skills. Think of White as the well-meaning project manager who suddenly realizes he's in over his head when the Wi-Fi goes out. The settlers' mission was clear: establish a foothold and start a new life. Easy, right? Except they landed in a place where the only welcome wagon was the wilderness and a few wary indigenous tribes. The local Algonquian people, understandably, weren't thrilled about sharing their backyard with a bunch of underprepared Europeans. Relations were tense, and resources were scarce. The settlers soon found themselves in a pickle that made a jar of brine look like a jacuzzi. By late 1587, with supplies dwindling and morale plummeting faster than the stock of a failed tech startup, John White sailed back to England for reinforcements. He promised to return quickly, but the Spanish Armada had other plans. Spain and England were at each other's throats, and Queen Elizabeth I needed every seaworthy vessel to fend off the Spanish threat. White was stuck in England until 1590, his return delayed by war and bureaucracy. Classic case of, I'd love to help, but my hands are tied. When White finally returned to Roanoke, he found nothing. The colony was deserted, and the only clue was the word Crowson carved into a post with CRO etched into a nearby tree. It seemed like a cryptic message, or perhaps the world's first abandoned group chat. White had hoped to find his family and colonists settled in, maybe complaining about the humidity, but instead they'd vanished without a trace. So, what happened to the Roanoke colonists? Theories abound like conspiracy nuts at a UFO convention. One popular idea is that they assimilated with nearby tribes, like the Croatoans, trading Elizabethan fashion tips for survival skills. Archaeological evidence, such as European artifacts found in Native American sites, suggests they might have been absorbed into local communities, blending cultures like a historical smoothie. Another theory posits that they tried to sail back to England on makeshift boats, a plan as ill-fated as trying to row across the Atlantic in a canoe made of optimism. Storms, starvation, or run-ins with hostile tribes could have spelled doom for the would-be sailors. Some even speculate about Spanish raids, though there's scant evidence to back that up. The Spanish were busy enough without detouring to hassle a handful of settlers. The romantic notion of a lost colony persists because it taps into our love for unsolved mysteries and the allure of a vanished world. It's like the historical equivalent of a cliffhanger that leaves viewers begging for the next episode. The truth, though, is likely less sensational. The harsh realities of colonial life disease, scarcity, and conflict probably played a bigger role in their disappearance than any grand conspiracy. Economically, Roanoke's failure was a cautionary tale. Colonization was as costly as it was risky. The English crown and private investors pumped money into these ventures hoping for gold, glory, and new markets. Instead, they got a ghost story. The lesson? DIY colonization without a solid plan is like assembling IKEA furniture without the manual. Sure, you might end up with something resembling a chair, but don't sit on it. Roanoke's legacy is a reminder of the perils of overreach and the importance of preparation. It highlights the challenges of cultural misunderstandings and the consequences of treating the New World like a blank slate rather than a mosaic of existing civilizations. The English would eventually learn from these mistakes, paving the way for more successful colonies like Jamestown, but not without enduring a few more bumps along the way. As we ponder the fate of Roanoke, it's worth considering how this vanished colony shaped the future of exploration and settlement. It's a story of ambition, failure, and the enduring human spirit that drives us to seek new horizons, even when the map is blank and the risks are high. And while the colonists themselves may be lost to history, their tale continues to captivate and caution us, reminding us of the thin line between adventure and folly. So, as we leave the mystery of Roanoke behind, let's set sail for yet another enigma lurking in the annals of history. Buckle up, because next time we're diving into the murky waters of the Bermuda Triangle, where compasses spin like disco balls and planes vanish into thin air. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep questioning the tales of old, because history has a funny way of repeating itself, sometimes with better special effects. As we bid farewell to the Bermuda Triangle's swirling enigma, let's turn our attention to another puzzle that's been tying scholars in knots for centuries, the Voynich manuscript. This isn't just any old dusty tome, but a vaunted relic of the mysterious and the undecipherable. Unlike your typical beach read, the Voynich manuscript is more like a literary Rubik's Cube, wrapped in an enigma, dipped in a big bowl of what on earth is this? The manuscript, named after Wilfred Voynich, the antiquarian book dealer who brought it to modern fame in 1912, is an illustrated codex written in an unknown script and an equally baffling language. But, here's the kicker, it dates back to the early 15th century, around 1404 to 1438, thanks to radiocarbon dating. That's right, this confounding collection of pages has been around since before Columbus even dreamed of sailing the ocean blue. The manuscript comprises about 240 pages of vellum, a fancy word for calfskin parchment, and it's filled with illustrations of plants, astronomical diagrams, and what can only be described as a medieval fever dream. There are pictures of women frolicking in what looks like green bathtubs connected by plumbing systems that wouldn't pass any modern safety inspection. Then there are the plants, some of which botanists still can't match to any known species. It's as if the author had one too many pints of medieval ale and decided to sketch the flora of a parallel universe. The language of the manuscript, often referred to as Voynichese, is another puzzle altogether. Despite the best efforts of cryptographers, linguists, and code breakers, nobody's cracked it yet. And believe me, they've tried. During World War II, America's top code breakers took a swing at it, but even they came up empty-handed. It's like the manuscript is taunting us from across the ages, whispering, "You think you're so clever, don't you?" Some theories suggest it's a lost language or a clever cipher. Others propose it's a hoax, an elaborate prank by a medieval joker with too much time and too much vellum on their hands. But here's the thing. Statistical analysis of the text suggests a level of consistency that's hard to fake. It shows patterns and structures that indicate it's more than just gibberish. So, was the Voynich manuscript an attempt at creating a new language, or perhaps a coded message only intended for a select few? The jury's still out. Economically speaking, the manuscript has had quite the journey. Wilfred Voynich purchased it in Italy from a Jesuit library, and its provenance is like a game of historical hot potato, with owners including Emperor Rudolph II of the Holy Roman Empire, who reportedly paid 600 gold ducats for it, a small fortune at the time. Today, it resides at Yale University's Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library, a testament to its enduring allure and the human fascination with the unknown. The Voynich manuscript stands as a monument to our obsession with puzzles and the allure of the unsolvable. It's like a historical black hole, drawing in scholars and amateurs alike, each hoping to be the one to finally crack its code. But what does this obsession tell us about ourselves? Perhaps it's that we're wired to seek answers, to decode the past in hopes of understanding the present. Or maybe it's just that we love a good mystery, the kind that lets us play detective without the risk of getting stuck in a noir film. In a world where information is a click away, the Voynich manuscript reminds us that some secrets are stubbornly silent. It's a humbling reminder that not everything can be neatly packaged and explained, a testament to the limits of human knowledge and the infinite possibilities that lie beyond. So, while the manuscript might never reveal its secrets, its true value lies in the quest itself, in the thrill of the chase and the promise of discovery. As we wrap up this exploration of ancient secrets, from burning libraries to golden cities and confounding codices, what can we take away? History, it seems, is as much about the questions we ask as the answers we find. It's a reminder that the past is full of mysteries that refuse to be silenced, that the human spirit is driven by curiosity and the desire to understand the world in all its complexity. Whether we're deciphering ancient scripts or searching for lost colonies, our fascination with the unknown endures, a testament to our insatiable quest for knowledge. In the end, perhaps the greatest lesson from these ancient secrets is the reminder that history is not a static tale etched in stone, but a living, breathing dialogue between the past and the present. It challenges us to question, to explore, and to never stop seeking the stories that make us who we are. So keep your curiosity sharp and your skepticism sharper, because who knows what other mysteries are waiting to be unearthed just beyond the next turn of the page. In the bustling streets of 18th century Edinburgh, a city as cold and grey as its stone buildings, young David Hume was already proving to be a bit of an odd duck. Born in 1711, David was the second son in a family with just enough financial woes to make life interesting. You see, the Hume family was part of the Scottish gentry noble in name but not in pocket. They had just enough money to keep up appearances, but not enough to avoid the occasional awkward cough when the subject of wealth came up at dinner parties. David's father passed when he was just a child, leaving his mother, Catherine, to manage the household. Despite the constraints, Mama Hume was determined to see her children rise above their station's fiscal limitations. So, at the ripe age of 12, David was packed off to the University of Edinburgh. Yes, you heard that right, 12. Back then, sending your preteen to university wasn't considered a form of child neglect. It was just how the ambitious middling classes rolled. Now, David had a thirst for knowledge that made your average kid's obsession with Fortnite look like a passing fancy. But the university curriculum didn't exactly tickle his intellectual fancy. He found the lectures as dry as a Scottish oatcake, and the professors about as inspiring as a damp Scottish afternoon. By 15, which is the age most of us are figuring out how to string a coherent sentence together, Hume had already decided he'd had enough of formal education. He dropped out, a move that would make modern parents faint, but was just par for the course in his day, especially when your heart burned for something more. Now, David wasn't just abandoning academia to loaf around. No, this was Hume, a lad who was all about the big questions, capital B, capital Q. He was diving headfirst into philosophy like it was the ultimate pool party for the mind. He began writing feverishly, which in those days meant scribbling away with quill and ink, no doubt smudging his cuffs and getting ink on his face. The young philosopher was cooking up what would become his A Treatise of Human Nature, a work he famously described as being dead-born from the press. And you know what? He wasn't wrong. When it finally hit the shelves in 1739, it landed with all the impact of a feather on a mattress. The academic elite, those gatekeepers of intellectual prestige, greeted his ideas with a collective shrug. The response was so lackluster, it was like he'd thrown a party and nobody showed up. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Back in his early writing days, Hume was still figuring out how to package his thoughts in a way that didn't make people's eyes glaze over. His philosophical musings lacked the catchy hook that might snag a reader's attention, but he was nothing if not persistent. Hume kept at it, undeterred by the resounding silence from the scholarly community. Financially, things were still tight back home. The Hume family estate wasn't exactly a cash cow, more like a cash-challenged chicken. And while David's older brother John was doing his best to keep things afloat, our young philosopher had to consider more practical matters, like how to keep himself in ink and paper, the 18th century equivalent of a laptop and Wi-Fi. In those days, Edinburgh was a city in flux, a place where the Enlightenment was beginning to stretch its wings. The intellectual air was thick with ideas, though not always the kind that paid the bills. Hume's early efforts were a hard sell in a city where economic realities often overshadowed philosophical dreams. Yet, despite his meagre beginnings and the initial lack of recognition, Hume's relentless pursuit of understanding the human condition was a testament to his passion. He was like the underdog in a philosophical Rocky movie, minus the punching, of course, but with plenty of mental sparring. So there he was, young David Hume, the dropout who dared to dream big, scribbling away in Edinburgh, while the world remained largely unaware of the intellectual powerhouse in their midst. Little did they know this early chapter of his life would lay the groundwork for a legacy that would eventually prove the scoffers wrong and give the academic elite a run for their money. But for now, he was just a young man with big ideas, a small purse, and a determination that could rival even the most stubborn of Scottish thistles. And just like that, young David Hume decided it was time to trade the grey skies of Edinburgh for the promise of something a bit more, shall we say, continental. It was 1734, and Hume, with his pockets lighter than a souffle, set his sights on France. Why France, you ask? Well, it was the place where intellectual dreams could soar, and where the Enlightenment was practically the latest fashion trend, like powdered wigs and questionable hygiene. Hume was banking on the idea that a change of scenery would be just the creative kick in the pants he needed. Now, let's not sugarcoat it. Hume's financial situation was more starving artist than thriving philosopher. He wasn't exactly rolling in the kind of dough that lets you live in a Parisian penthouse. No, our man David was roughing it. He settled down in La Flèche, a small town with enough charm to almost distract him from the fact that his budget was tighter than a corset at a Victorian ball. La Flèche was home to the Jesuit College of La Flèche, a place that once counted René Descartes among its alumni. The town had all the academic air one could ask for, minus the hefty price tag of the French capital. But why La Flèche? Well, Hume had a plan. The town was far enough from the distractions of Paris, but close enough for the intellectual cross-pollination he craved. It was like living in a neighborhood restaurant that serves up Michelin star ideas without the snooty waiters. Here, Hume could focus on his magnum opus, a treatise of human nature, a work that he hoped would be the philosophical equivalent of a chart-topping single. He was a man on a mission, and like any good mission, it came with its fair share of challenges. Imagine trying to write a groundbreaking philosophical treatise while worrying about where your next meal was coming from. Not exactly the romantic image of a philosopher, but hey, even Socrates had to deal with his fair share of hemlock. By 1739, Hume had completed his masterpiece, or so he thought. A treatise of human nature was finally ready to meet the world, and Hume was brimming with the kind of optimism usually reserved for lottery winners. Yet, when it finally hit the presses, the reception was more crickets than critical acclaim. Hume famously quipped that his work fell dead born from the press, which is a poetic way of saying it flopped harder than a fish out of water. But let's pause for a second. Why did this happen? Was the world just not ready for Hume's groundbreaking ideas? Or was Hume, despite his intellectual prowess, just not that great at the whole marketing thing? In a world obsessed with catchy slogans and soundbites, Hume's dense philosophical prose was like trying to sell kale to a candy store. The Enlightenment may have been in full swing, but even the most enlightened minds needed a little razzle-dazzle to keep their attention. The academic elite were more interested in flashy philosophical debates, not the heavy lifting of Hume's introspective analysis. It didn't help that Hume's writing style was more marathon than sprint. His work required patience, a commodity in short supply among those who preferred their philosophy with a side of entertainment. Meanwhile, back in Scotland, the economic realities were still as harsh as ever. The Hume family estate was more liability than asset, with David's brother John doing his best to keep the financial wolves at bay. Those economic pressures only fueled Hume's determination. He knew that if he was going to make it as a philosopher, he'd have to find a way to turn his intellectual labour into actual, spendable cash. Despite the lukewarm reception of his treatise, Hume wasn't one to throw in the towel. He was like a philosophical Rocky Balboa, getting knocked down but never out. His relentless pursuit of understanding the human condition was unwavering. Sure, his first major work might have face-planted on its debut, but Hume was playing the long game. Now, here's where the myth-busting comes in. Today, we hail Hume as one of the great minds of Western philosophy. But during his time in France, he was just another struggling writer trying to make sense of a world that wasn't quite ready for his ideas. The romantic notion of the tortured genius is charming, but the reality was far less glamorous. Hume was living proof that even the sharpest minds can struggle to find their footing in a world that doesn't always value depth over dazzle. So, there he was, a Scottish philosopher in France, with a work that had, quite literally, failed to launch. But if there's one thing we can learn from Hume's story, it's that persistence is key. His philosophical journey was just beginning, and he was determined to continue his quest for truth, no matter how many times the world tried to shut the door in his face. As Hume packed up his quills and papers, ready to move on from La Flèche, he carried with him not just the disappointment of his first major flop, but also an unyielding resolve. His pursuit of philosophical truth wasn't just a passing phase, it was a lifelong commitment. And while his bank account might have been running on fumes, his intellectual fire was burning brighter than ever. So there he was, David Hume, philosopher extraordinaire, packing up his quills and papers, his dreams of philosophical greatness still intact despite the bruising reality of public indifference. Leaving La Flèche with a head full of ideas and a pocket full of dreams, since cash still wasn't part of his vocabulary, he set his sights on London. The year was 1748, and the city was buzzing with intellectual energy, a veritable magnet for thinkers, dreamers, and the occasional charlatan. It was a place where ideas were the currency, and Hume was ready to cash in. Arriving in London was like stepping into an Enlightenment theme park. The city was a whirl of smoky coffeehouses, heated debates, and pamphlets flying off the presses faster than a scandalous TikTok video goes viral today. Hume, with his penchant for the profound and a nose for philosophical opportunity, plunged headfirst into this intellectual hotbed. Now, the London intellectual scene was a bit of a mixed bag. Sure, it was brimming with brilliant minds, but it was also a place where egos were as inflated as a soufflé in a hot oven. Despite this, Hume managed to carve out a niche for himself, and it wasn't long before he was rubbing shoulders with some of the era's most influential thinkers. Among these was Adam Smith, the father of modern economics, who was then just a young lecturer at the University of Glasgow. The two Scotsmen hit it off like a house on fire, or rather, like two shrewd minds sparking off each other's ideas. Smith, with his sharp intellect and keen sense of economic realities, found a kindred spirit in Hume. They were like intellectual partners in crime, frequenting the same circles and bouncing ideas off each other like philosophical ping-pong. Their friendship was built on a shared understanding of the human condition, with Smith's economic theories finding a philosophical anchor in Hume's musings on human nature. It's said that Smith's seminal work, The Wealth of Nations, published in 1776, bore the unmistakable influence of his friend Hume's insights. But Hume's foray into London's intellectual circles wasn't all smooth sailing. Enter Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the Swiss-born philosopher who had all the drama of a modern reality TV star. Rousseau was notorious for his volatile temperament, and his relationship with Hume was nothing short of a soap opera. The two met in 1766, when Hume, ever the gracious host, invited Rousseau to stay with him in England. Initially, the friendship seemed promising, like a diplomatic mission between two great nations. However, things quickly soured. Rousseau, it seemed, was a walking bundle of paranoia wrapped in a cloak of genius. He became convinced that Hume was plotting against him, a suspicion that spiraled into a public feud that had the intellectual elite watching with the kind of morbid curiosity usually reserved for train wrecks. The fallout was messy, with letters exchanged that were as acrid as they were eloquent. Despite the drama, or maybe because of it, the Rousseau affair became one of the most talked-about episodes of the Enlightenment, a testament to the fact that even philosophers weren't immune to a bit of scandalous intrigue. Now, while all this was happening, Hume was also engaged in another ambitious project, his History of England. Published between 1754 and 1762, this work was less a dispassionate chronicle of facts, and more a sweeping narrative that would have made a Hollywood screenwriter proud. It was a bestseller, capturing the imagination of an audience eager for a rollicking tale of kings, queens, and political machinations. But let's pull back the curtain on Hume's historical opus. While it was a commercial success, selling like hotcakes, the accuracy of his history was, shall we say, up for debate. Hume had a penchant for embellishment, painting vivid pictures that sometimes strayed from the stark outlines of truth. It was history, with a flourish, designed to entertain as much as to inform. Hume himself found this amusing. He was well aware that his work was more a tapestry of storytelling than a meticulous record of events. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here was a man whose philosophical treatises struggled to gain traction, but whose somewhat fanciful history books were all the rage. It was like spending years crafting a profound symphony only to have your kazoo solo steal the show. Hume took it all in stride, with the kind of wry amusement that comes from knowing that the world, for all its pretensions, often prefers a good story over hard facts. And so, in the bustling milieu of London, Hume thrived. He navigated the treacherous waters of intellectual fame with the ease of a seasoned sailor, his friendships with the likes of Smith and Rousseau adding both depth and drama to his life. Through it all, he remained committed to his philosophical pursuits, ever the seeker of truth in a world that sometimes seemed more interested in the glitter of illusion. As he continued to write and think, Hume's influence began to grow, his ideas seeping into the fabric of Enlightenment thought like ink into parchment. Yet, despite his successes, he never lost sight of the harsh realities of life. He understood better than most that the journey to intellectual greatness was fraught with challenges and contradictions, where the pursuit of truth often walked hand in hand with the allure of storytelling. Hume's London years were a testament to his resilience and adaptability. Despite the initial setbacks and the occasional scandal, he emerged not only as a leading figure in the Enlightenment, but as a thinker whose influence would resonate far beyond his own time. His story, with all its twists and turns, serves as a reminder that the path to greatness is rarely straightforward, often requiring a dance between reality and the imagination. As we wrap up this chapter of Hume's life, it's clear that his time in London was a period of both triumph and turmoil. His friendships with Smith and Rousseau, his foray into historical writing, and his ability to navigate the complex world of Enlightenment thought all shaped the legacy of a man who dared to dream big. And while his story doesn't end here, it's a fitting pause in the journey of a philosopher who, despite the odds, managed to leave an indelible mark on the world. But stay tuned. There's more to come in the life of David Hume, a man whose ideas would continue to echo through the corridors of time. As Hume continued his intellectual escapades in London, buoyed by a growing circle of peers and an audience that finally seemed to be paying attention, his ideas were like fine Scotch whisky, maturing with time, complex, and a tad controversial. By the mid-18th century, Hume's philosophical works were finally gaining traction, and he was becoming something of an intellectual celebrity. But, like any good story, his rise to prominence wasn't without its fair share of drama. Let's dig into the meat of it. Hume's later years were marked by a tug-of-war between growing acclaim and simmering controversy. His philosophical musings, particularly on religion, were raising eyebrows higher than a Georgian lady's headdress. You see, Hume had this pesky habit of questioning everything, including the existence of God, which in 18th century Britain was about as popular as suggesting that tea time be replaced with coffee breaks. Hume's skepticism was laid bare in works like An Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding, where he challenged the notion of miracles. He argued that miracles were violations of the laws of nature, and that the evidence for them was less credible than the evidence against them. Cue the gasps. This was the sort of intellectual grenade that made him persona non grata in certain circles. The church wasn't exactly sending him holiday cards, and accusations of atheism began to stick to him like a poorly aimed wig. Yet, Hume handled his detractors with the kind of wry humour that would make Oscar Wilde proud. Picture this. A man accused of tearing down the moral fabric of society, who instead of getting defensive, simply shrugged and carried on. It's said that when criticised for his supposed atheism, Hume would quip that his only crime was having the audacity to think for himself. He had the rare ability to laugh off the outrage, which might have been his greatest superpower. But let's not forget our old friend Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who, despite their falling out, continued to be a source of amusement for Hume. Rousseau's paranoia, which had previously turned their friendship into a circus, became the butt of Hume's jokes. One of Hume's more famous retorts came after Rousseau accused him of trying to ruin his reputation. Hume, with a smirk that you can almost hear echoing through the centuries, is said to have responded, "I wish I could do you as much good as you do me harm." It was a masterclass in the art of the philosophical clapback. Meanwhile, Hume's reputation as a historian was also on the rise. His History of England was not just a commercial success, but a cultural phenomenon. People were devouring his volumes like they were the 18th century equivalent of a Netflix binge. And while his narrative flair sometimes took liberties with the truth, it was undeniably influential. The economic impact wasn't lost on him either. Finally, Hume was seeing some financial return on his intellectual investment. His bank account was starting to look less like a pauper's purse and more like a philosopher's piggy bank. Now, let's not sugarcoat it. Hume's rise to fame wasn't all champagne and caviar. The controversy swirling around his religious skepticism meant he was never quite able to shake the whispers of atheism. In 1752, when he applied for the chair of moral philosophy at the University of Edinburgh, his candidacy was shot down faster than you can say heresy. The rejection was a blow, but Hume, ever the optimist, took it in stride. After all, he was a man who thrived on intellectual challenges, not academic accolades. As Hume's ideas gained momentum, they began to influence a new generation of thinkers. His skepticism and empiricism laid the groundwork for what would become modern philosophy. And while the Church might have been less than thrilled, the Enlightenment thinkers were eating it up with a spoon. Hume's philosophical offspring, if you will, included the likes of Immanuel Kant, who famously credited Hume with awakening him from his dogmatic slumber. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Hume's story isn't all about the big names and ideological battles. It's also about the economic realities of the time, which played a significant role in shaping his life and work. The mid-1700s were a period of significant economic change in Britain. The Industrial Revolution was beginning to stir, bringing with it both opportunity and upheaval. Hume, ever the astute observer, noted these shifts and their impact on society. His economic insights, though often overshadowed by his philosophical contributions, were nonetheless profound. Take, for instance, his essay of The Balance of Trade, where Hume challenged the mercantilist view that national wealth was a zero-sum game. He argued instead that trade could be mutually beneficial, a notion that was as radical then as it is commonplace now. Hume's economic theories, though not as well known as those of his pal Adam Smith, were nonetheless foundational to the development of modern economics. As Hume aged, his health began to decline, but his wit remained sharp as ever. He retired to Edinburgh in 1709, where he lived comfortably thanks to his successful publications. By now, Hume was something of a living legend, a status he handled with characteristic modesty. Despite his growing fame, he remained approachable, often seen walking the streets of Edinburgh, engaging in conversations with anyone willing to discuss the big questions of life. In his later years, Hume embraced the role of elder statesman of philosophy with a twinkle in his eye and a ready laugh. He continued to write, penning essays and letters that reflected his deepening understanding of the human condition. His correspondence with younger philosophers, including James Boswell and the aforementioned Kant, was filled with the kind of gentle wisdom that comes from a life well lived and well examined. As we pause this chapter of Hume's life, it's clear that his later years were a mix of triumph and tribulation. His ideas, once dismissed, were now being celebrated even as controversy continued to dog him. Yet, through it all, Hume remained true to himself, a thinker who never shied away from asking the difficult questions, even when the answers led him into stormy waters. And while the end of his story is not yet here, it's evident that David Hume was a man whose legacy would echo through the ages, challenging and inspiring those who dared to question the status quo. Stay tuned, because the final act promises to be as riveting as the rest. As Hume's twilight years unfolded, he became a sort of philosophical oracle, his Edinburgh residence, a hive buzzing with curious minds, eager to glean wisdom from the grand old man of scepticism. But let's not kid ourselves. Hume wasn't just sitting around dispensing sagacious nuggets like a fortune cookie with a degree. No, he was still very much in the game, challenging assumptions and poking holes in the inflated egos of Enlightenment think tanks. By the time Hume passed away in 1776, at the not-too-shabby age of 65, he had left behind a legacy as rich and complex as his favourite claret. His contributions to philosophy, particularly his brand of empiricism and scepticism, had stirred the pot of intellectual discourse, forcing everyone from Immanuel Kant to Thomas Jefferson to rethink their positions. Let's break it down. Hume's scepticism wasn't just about doubting for the sake of it. It was a methodology, a way to sift through the clutter and get to the heart of what could be known for sure, or at least what seemed most probable. He was the original mythbuster, long before cable networks got in on the act. Take his famous notion of causation, or rather the lack thereof. Hume argued that what we often interpret as cause and effect might just be a sequence of events we've grown accustomed to, like assuming your cat knocks over the vase because it hates your decor rather than just because it was Tuesday. This radical rethinking of causation sent shockwaves through philosophical circles, shaking the foundations of how we understand the natural world. Kant, for one, credited Hume with waking him from his dogmatic slumber, a bit of philosophical insomnia that led to some of Kant's most significant work. But let's not just focus on the highbrow. Hume's ideas also trickled down to the everyday, influencing notions of personal identity and ethics. He posited that the self was a bundle of perceptions, a sort of ongoing tapestry of experience rather than a static entity. This idea was like an existential bombshell, challenging the very nature of what it meant to be you. In matters of ethics, Hume was all about the passions. He famously claimed, reason is, and ought only to be the slave of the passions, suggesting that emotions are the real drivers of human action. In a world obsessed with rationality, this was a splash of cold water, a reminder that humans are as much creatures of feeling as they are of thought. Now, let's talk economics, because Hume was no slouch in that department either. While Adam Smith might have gotten the glory, Hume laid some of the groundwork for economic theory. His essays on commerce and trade challenged mercantilist dogma, advocating for the benefits of free trade long before it became the rallying cry of economists worldwide. He understood that wealth wasn't just about hoarding gold, but about the flow of goods and services. A revolutionary idea at a time when nations were stockpiling like dragons on a hoard. Sure, Hume wasn't everyone's cup of tea or dram of whiskey for that matter. His skepticism about religion didn't win him many friends in ecclesiastical circles, and his candidness was often misconstrued as cold cynicism. Yet Hume was anything but cynical. He was a humanist at heart, deeply concerned with the common good and the improvement of society. He envisioned a world where reason and inquiry could coexist with empathy and compassion, a vision that resonates even today. So, let's debunk a myth or two while we're at it. The image of Hume as a dour skeptic is about as accurate as those old maps that showed sea monsters lurking off the edges of the known world. He was a man of humour and warmth, known for his convivial gatherings and his love of good food and drink. Hume's house was a hub of intellectual and social activity, where philosophical debates were as likely to erupt as laughter over a shared meal. He was a man who knew how to enjoy life, even as he pondered its deepest questions. In the end, Hume's legacy is a testament to the power of ideas, to the enduring impact one person can have on the world. His work laid the groundwork for modern philosophy, reshaping how we think about knowledge, ethics, and human nature. His skepticism, far from being a destructive force, was a tool for progress, challenging dogmas and paving the way for new insights. And while the romantic image of the tortured genius is appealing, the reality of Hume's life was far more nuanced. He was a man who embraced both the light and the shadow, who understood that truth is often found not in absolutes, but in the complexities of human experience. As we close the book on David Hume, it's clear that his story is one of transformation and resilience, a reminder that even in the face of indifference or opposition, the pursuit of knowledge and understanding is a noble endeavour. His humour and pragmatism, coupled with his relentless quest for truth, have left us with more than just a legacy of ideas. They've left us a blueprint for living with curiosity and courage in a world that still has much to learn from the past. So, next time you find yourself questioning the status quo, remember Hume, the philosopher who dared to doubt and change the world in the process. The morning light peeks over the jagged Andes, and you, an Inca engineer, are already up, shaking off the chill of the high-altitude air. It's the 13th century, and you've got a full day ahead, working on projects that make modern infrastructure look like Lincoln logs. The Inca Empire sprawls over 2,500 miles, about the same distance as driving from New York to Los Angeles without a single gas station hot dog in sight. You're part of the brain trust behind this sprawling network, and today you're tackling some of the Empire's most mind-bending feats of engineering. Forget wheels. You're moving stones the size of a minivan using nothing but manpower and a bit of cleverness. The Inca's secret recipe? A carefully choreographed dance of levers, ramps, and sheer human will. Those massive stones that form the foundations of your cities and fortresses aren't just impressive, they're a testament to your people's knack for turning the impossible into just another Tuesday. Your task today involves roadwork. But we're not talking asphalt and orange cones. The Kepak Yan, a road network that would have made Roman engineers weep with envy, stretches across mountains, valleys, and deserts, seamlessly connecting the empire. It's your job to oversee repairs and expansions, ensuring that messages, goods, and armies can travel as swiftly as the llamas that carry them. The road itself is a marvel, paved with stone and perfectly graded, a feat of engineering that disregards the petty inconvenience of gravity. As you set out, the grandeur of the Andes unfolds around you, its peaks sharp against the sky. The road you're inspecting today cuts through these mountains like a stone blade, and every mile is meticulously planned. Who needs Google Maps when you've got a network of relay runners, or shaskis, who can cover 150 miles a day to relay messages across the empire? These guys make the Pony Express look like a snail mail service. The Inca didn't bother with compasses either. Instead, they relied on the stars and a keen sense of the landscape. You navigate by the sun's arc and the natural contours of the land, which you've memorized like the back of your hand. It's a level of connection with the environment that modern folks might achieve if they ever put down their smartphones long enough to look up. As you walk, you're not just checking for wear and tear. You're also on the lookout for any signs of trouble, rock slides, erosion, or the odd band of rebels who haven't quite accepted the benevolent embrace of the Sapa Inca. The roads are lifelines, and keeping them functional is crucial to maintaining the flow of resources and information across this vast empire. But let's not kid ourselves. The roads aren't just for convenience. They're a political tool, a means to exert control over the far-flung territories of the empire. They allow the Sapa Inca to project power and maintain order, ensuring that his will is as unyielding as the stones you lay. It's a delicate balancing act of engineering, logistics, and a touch of imperial intimidation. As you inspect a particularly treacherous mountain pass, you marvel at the ingenuity required to carve a path through such unforgiving terrain. The Inca engineers, your colleagues, have used terraces and retaining walls to prevent landslides, creating a stable route where nature decreed there should be none. It's a testament to the empire's ability to bend the world to its will, a kind of environmental jiu-jitsu that makes the most of the resources at hand. The sun climbs higher, and with it your list of tasks. Next, you check on a crew moving a massive stone block to its final resting place in a new temple complex. This isn't just any stone, it's part of a sacred structure, a physical manifestation of the empire's divine right to rule. Watching the workers, you can't help but feel a twinge of pride. Sure, you're not carving your name into history with a chisel, but your contributions are etched into the very bones of the empire. As the day wears on, you take a moment to reflect on the sheer scale of it all. The Inca didn't have iron tools or draft animals, yet here you are, part of a civilization that could rival any in the world. It's not just the roads or the buildings, it's the system of communication, the agricultural terraces that feed millions, and the intricate social structure that keeps everything running smoothly. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the mountains, you head back to your village, your mind still buzzing with the day's challenges and triumphs. You're a small cog in a massive machine, but every stone you place, every road you repair, is a step towards ensuring that the Inca Empire remains the most formidable force in the Andes. So, as you sit down to a well-earned meal, you allow yourself a moment of satisfaction, not just because you've accomplished a day's work, but because you're part of something larger, something that will long outlast the fleeting concerns of daily life. The road is never-ending, but that's just the way you like it. Ah, the satisfaction of a day's work well done. As you sit down to your evening meal, the Andes silhouetted against the setting sun, your mind drifts to the next architectural marvel that's been buzzing through the empire like a chasqui on a caffeine high, Machu Picchu. Now, Machu Picchu is often called the lost city of the Incas, but let's be real, it's about as lost as your car keys when they're in your other hand. This mountaintop sanctuary wasn't exactly a bustling metropolis. It was more like the emperor's super-exclusive getaway spot, complete with stunning views and a few architectural tricks that make modern engineers want to bury their blueprints in shame. First off, let's talk about those legendary stone walls. They fit together so tightly that you couldn't slide a credit card between them if credit cards had existed back then. This isn't just about aesthetics, though the Incas were definitely flexing their design muscles. These walls are a masterclass in seismic resistance. In the Andes, the ground shakes like a maraca on a Friday night, and yet Machu Picchu stands unbothered. The secret? No mortar. That's right, these stones are cut and placed with such precision that they move with the tremors rather than crumble. It's the architectural equivalent of judo, using the Earth's force against itself. While we're on the topic of precision, let's debunk the myth of the city in the sky as some kind of ancient utopia. Sure, it's perched some 7,070 feet above sea level, but this wasn't a paradise in the clouds. It was a strategic masterpiece, chosen for its defensible position and its proximity to the sacred Urubamba River. The Incas weren't just building for beauty, they were constructing a statement of power and resilience, a monument that screamed, "We own this." And let's not forget the terraces that cascade down the mountainside like some kind of stepped garden of the gods. These aren't just for show, they're a critical part of the site's infrastructure, designed to control erosion and manage water flow. The Incas were pretty much the original masters of sustainable agriculture, using these terraces to grow crops in otherwise inhospitable terrain. They even had sophisticated canal systems to ensure each level received just the right amount of water. It's like they looked at Mother Nature and said, "Challenge accepted, but why go through all this trouble?" Sure, Machu Picchu is impressive, but it's not just a vanity project. This site, like many Inca constructions, served multiple purposes: religious, political, and economical. In the grand scheme of things, it was a shining symbol of the Supper Inca's divine rule, a physical manifestation of his ability to command the elements and, by extension, his people. It was also likely a hub for trade and agriculture, integrating the empire's far-flung regions into a cohesive whole. Talk about multitasking. Now, you might be wondering, why does Machu Picchu withstand the test of time while your IKEA bookshelf collapses if you so much as blink at it? Well, part of the answer lies in the quality of craftsmanship and the materials used. Those granite stones were hand-chiseled and fitted by artisans who'd honed their craft over generations. The Incas didn't cut corners, literally or figuratively. They had a holistic view of architecture, where everything from the choice of stone to its alignment with the surrounding landscape was considered. So, as you finish your meal and prepare for another day of empire building, you can't help but feel a sense of awe at the genius of your ancestors. These constructions were not just feats of engineering. They were expressions of a world-view that saw humanity as part of a cosmic order, where every stone had its place in the grand design. The roads, the terraces, the temples. They weren't just infrastructure, they were the lifeblood of an empire, binding its people together in a shared destiny. It's a lot to ponder. But as the evening cools and the stars emerge, you're reminded that while the road ahead is long, it's also lined with the achievements of those who came before. As long as you keep placing one stone after another, you'll be part of a legacy that endures, just like the walls of Machu Picchu, unyielding and eternal. As the stars twinkle overhead, you can almost hear the collective hum of Inca society, a well-oiled machine running not just on stone and sweat, but on something even more intangible, labor. Welcome to the economic engine room of the Inca Empire, where the real magic happens. Let's dive into the meter system, the unsung hero behind those marvels of engineering you've been sweating over. Now, the meter system wasn't just a labor pool, it was the empire's secret sauce. Picture this: instead of taxes, you paid your dues with time and effort. Every able-bodied citizen was drafted into communal labor, building roads, temples, and, yes, those awe-inspiring agricultural terraces. The Inca didn't just slap a help wanted sign on the empire, they orchestrated a symphony of manpower that could rival any modern megaproject. Here's the kicker: the meter wasn't just about building stuff. It was a social contract, binding people to the state and to each other. It kept the wheels of the empire turning smoothly, while also fostering a sense of community and shared purpose. This wasn't just a workforce, it was a nation-building exercise, a way to cement loyalty and ensure everyone had skin in the game. But wait, there's more to this story than just a well-organized workforce. What about the tales of Incan wealth that have tantalized treasure hunters and historians alike? Are they truth, or just a well-spun yarn? Spoiler: the reality is as multifaceted as a perfectly cut gemstone. Sure, the Inca had their share of bling. Gold and silver adorned their temples and palaces, but these weren't just shiny trinkets. They were symbols of divine power, meant to dazzle subjects and overawe enemies. The real wealth of the empire, though, lay in its infrastructure and agricultural prowess. Take those terraces you've been eyeing. They're not just architectural showpieces, they're the breadbasket of the empire. The Inca mastered the art of terrace farming, carving arable land out of sheer mountainsides like nature's sculptors. These terraces allowed them to cultivate crops at dizzying altitudes, feeding a population that numbered in the millions. And let's not forget the ingenious irrigation systems that kept these terraces lush and productive. The Inca didn't just farm, they orchestrated a symphony of water management, using canals and aqueducts to ensure every drop was put to good use. Imagine this. In a world without modern technology, the Inca managed to grow an astonishing variety of crops, from potatoes and maize to quinoa and amaranth. Each terrace was like a mini microclimate, allowing the Inca to experiment with different growing conditions. Talk about getting the most bang for your buck, or in this case, your bushel. The Inca economy was as diverse as their crops. They didn't trade in currency, their wealth was measured in labor, land, and loyalty. The state controlled the distribution of resources, ensuring everyone got their fair share. This wasn't a free market economy, it was a finely tuned system of reciprocity, where giving back was just as important as taking. So, what's the takeaway here? The Incan economy wasn't just about gold and glory. It was a complex, interconnected web of labor, agriculture, and social cohesion. And while the meter system might sound like a relic of the past, its principles of shared responsibility and communal effort still resonate today. As you ponder these insights, remember that the Inca Empire wasn't just a collection of stone and mortar. It was a vibrant, living entity, a testament to the power of collaboration and ingenuity. And as you prepare to tackle the challenges of tomorrow, know that you're part of a legacy that defies time and transcends the boundaries of history. The road you're walking is one forged by the hands of giants, and it's up to you to keep that legacy alive. So, as the night deepens, take a moment to appreciate the stars above and the ground beneath your feet. You're standing on the shoulders of a civilization that dared to dream big and build even bigger. And while the journey ahead may be long, it's one worth taking, step by step, stone by stone, through the annals of history. As you rise from your midday break, the Andean sun now a little less punishing, it's time to dive back into the nerve center of the Inca Empire, its legendary road system. Spanning over an astonishing 25,000 miles, this network was the backbone of one of history's most formidable empires. It's like the internet of the 13th century, connecting people, places, and power like never before. Forget your morning commute. The Inca roads were more like a superhighway for armies, goods, and information, weaving through the empire like a stone tapestry. But before we get too starry-eyed about this engineering marvel, let's break down some myths. First up, the Chasqui, those fleet-footed messengers we've all heard about. They're often likened to marathon runners on steroids, but the truth is more nuanced. Sure, these guys could cover up to 150 miles in a day, but it wasn't just about speed. Picture this, a relay system where each Chasqui sprints a short distance before passing the message baton to the next guy. It's a bit like a human chainmail, with information flying across the empire faster than you can say, "Supper Inca." You see, these weren't just joggers with a death wish. They were highly trained, government-funded athletes operating out of strategically placed way stations called tampas. Think of tampas as your local pit stop, offering rest, refreshment, and a fresh pair of sandals. The empire was practically running on foot power, and the Chasqui were the unsung heroes, delivering messages with the speed and reliability of a FedEx truck on a caffeine binge. Now, why did the Inca invest so heavily in such an expansive road network? Political control, plain and simple. This wasn't just about getting your quinoa delivery on time. With roads stretching from Quito in the north to Santiago in the south, the Inca could project power and maintain order over an area roughly the size of Western Europe. That's no small feat when your transportation options consist of llamas and your own 2 feet. Here's the kicker. These roads weren't just about keeping the governors happy. They were military lifelines, allowing the Sapa Inca to swiftly deploy troops to any rebellious province that dared question his authority. It's like having a medieval hotline to crush dissent, and it worked. The roads facilitated rapid troop movements, enabling the Inca to expand their empire from a modest kingdom in Cusco to a sprawling dominion that covered modern-day Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, and parts of Chile, Argentina, and Colombia. But let's not forget trade, the lifeblood of any empire. The Inca didn't have a currency system like we do today, but these roads were bustling with barter and exchange. Goods like textiles, pottery, and precious metals moved across the Andes with remarkable efficiency. And while the Inca didn't trade extensively with neighboring civilizations, they had a vast internal market, with resources flowing from one region to another like a well-oiled machine. The roads were the arteries of the empire, pumping life into every corner, from the coastal deserts to the mountain valleys. And here's a fun fact. The roads were so well built that parts of them are still in use today. That's right. The next time you take a leisurely hike along the Inca Trail, remember that you're treading on stones laid by hands that have long since turned to dust. It's a testament to the skill of Inca engineers who built roads that could withstand the ravages of time and nature. So, what's the takeaway from all this road talk? The Inca road system was more than just a feat of engineering. It was a tool of empire, a means to connect, control, and conquer. It allowed the Supper Inca to maintain a firm grip over a vast and diverse realm, ensuring that his will was as unyielding as the stone paths that crisscrossed the Andes. But as you head back to your duties, consider the human cost of this enterprise. The roads weren't built by magic, they were carved out by the hands of thousands of laborers working under the meter system we touched on earlier. It was a colossal effort, requiring not just manpower but also the coordination and logistics to keep the project going. And while the roads brought prosperity and power to the empire, they were also a reminder of the control exerted by the Supper Inca over his subjects. Yet even in this demonstration of imperial might, there's something deeply compelling about the Inca roads. They represented a vision of connectivity and unity, a belief in the power of infrastructure to bind an empire together. It's a lesson that resonates even today as we continue to build networks, both physical and digital, to bring our world closer together. As the afternoon wears on, the sun sinking lower in the sky, you're reminded of the enduring legacy of these ancient roads. They were more than just pathways, they were the lifelines of a civilization, a testament to human ingenuity and ambition. And as you walk these stone paths, you can't help but feel a sense of awe at the scale of it all. A reminder that, even in the harshest of landscapes, humanity can carve out a place for itself, one stone at a time. As you walk these stone paths, you can't help but feel a sense of awe at the scale of it all. A reminder that even in the harshest of landscapes, humanity can carve out a place for itself, one stone at a time. And speaking of carving out places, let's chat about the Inca Empire's grand exit. An end that feels like an epic saga, complete with intrigue, betrayal, and a dash of plague for good measure. Now, don't get too misty-eyed just yet. The fall of the Inca Empire is a story that's often soaked in romance and tragedy, like a historical soap opera. But let's strip away the melodrama and look at the facts. In 1532, not long after your hypothetical day in the life, the empire was at its zenith, sprawling over an impressive 2 million square kilometers. That's like fitting 3 Texases into one empire. But then came the Spanish, led by Francisco Pizarro, a man with a knack for conquest and a truly unfortunate haircut. Pizarro and his band of 168 conquistadors, yes, just 168, arrived in Peru with steel armor, horses, and diseases that the Inca had never encountered. Smallpox alone did more damage than any sword, sweeping through the population like a viral wildfire. It's a grim reminder that sometimes the greatest threats are invisible, lurking in the coughs and sneezes of uninvited guests. The political situation didn't help either. The Inca Empire was embroiled in a brutal civil war between 2 brothers, Atahualpa and Huascar, each wanting to wear the crown. This internal conflict weakened the empire, making it ripe for the picking. Enter Pizarro, who played both sides like a master puppeteer. He captured Atahualpa, demanding a ransom that would make even the wealthiest of modern billionaires blink, 24 tons of gold and silver, equivalent to roughly 1.5 billion today. Talk about a steep price for freedom. But even after the ransom was paid, Pizarro executed Atahualpa, effectively decapitating the empire's leadership. The Spanish then leveraged the chaos, taking control of Cusco and systematically dismantling the Inca state. It was a brutal, swift conquest that left historians shaking their heads and novelists reaching for their pens. Now, here's where the myth gets juicy. Many tales paint the Inca as noble savages, undone by their own naivety and the ruthless Spanish. While there's a kernel of truth in that, the reality is more nuanced. The Inca were astute politicians and fierce warriors, but they were up against an adversary wielding superior technology and exploiting their internal divisions. The Spanish conquest wasn't just luck, it was a calculated series of moves in a deadly game of chess. But let's not end on a downer. The legacy of Inca engineering is far more enduring than their political empire. Those roads, terraces, and fortresses didn't crumble with the empire. They stood the test of time, silent witnesses to the genius of their builders. Even today, modern engineers scratch their heads at the precision of Inca stonework, wondering how ancient artisans managed feats that challenge our most sophisticated technology. Take the terraces, for example. They weren't just about making mountains farmable. They were an ancient lesson in sustainability. The Incas understood the land, respecting its contours and harnessing its potential without bulldozing it into submission. In an era of climate change and environmental degradation, there's a lesson there that rings louder than 1,000 TED Talks. Work with nature, not against it. And those roads? They weren't just pathways. They were lifelines that connected distant communities, encouraging trade and communication. In a world that's increasingly digital and disconnected, the Inca road system reminds us of the power of infrastructure to unite and empower. So, what can modern engineers learn from the Incas? For starters, that bigger isn't always better. Sometimes, the most effective solutions are those that embrace simplicity and elegance. The Incas didn't have CAD software or 3D printers, but they had an intimate understanding of their environment and a commitment to craftsmanship. It's a powerful reminder that innovation doesn't always require cutting-edge technology. Sometimes it just requires cutting a stone to fit perfectly with its neighbor. As you stand there, reflecting on these ancient feats, it's clear that the Inca Empire was about more than just conquest and construction. It was about vision, an understanding that true power comes not from dominating the land, but from living in harmony with it. It's a legacy that endures, etched into the stones of Machu Picchu, the terraces of the Sacred Valley, and the roads that still snake through the Andes. So as the sun dips below the horizon, casting the Andean peaks in silhouette, you're left with a sense of wonder at what humanity can achieve. The Inca Empire may have fallen, but its spirit lives on in every stone, every terrace, every road. It's a testament to the enduring power of human ingenuity, a reminder that while empires rise and fall, the true legacy of a civilization is written not in its conquests, but in its contributions to the world. The clamour of the market wakes you before the sun has fully decided to make its grand entrance over 14th-century Castile. The distant braying of a donkey, the sharp calls of vendors advertising their wares. It's an orchestra of medieval commerce, and you, dear jester, are about to take centre stage in this bustling tableau. As a jester, you aren't just the medieval equivalent of a stand-up comic. Oh no, you're something of a Swiss Army knife in a world still figuring out which end of the fork to use. You entertain, yes, but you also advise and satirize, all while keeping a keen eye on the shifting sands of politics and economics. In case you've forgotten, the jester is more of a courtly Swiss Army knife than a simple jokester. Your role extends beyond entertainment. You're an advisor, a satirist, and occasionally the medieval version of a political cartoon. Forget the floppy hat with bells, although you do rock that look. You wield words as weapons and humour as your shield. Take a moment to smell the air, a strange brew of freshly baked bread mixed with the less pleasant aroma of the street. That loaf of bread you smell? It'll set you back about 1/4 of a silver penny. Not exactly a steal, but then again, your salary isn't exactly breaking the coffers either. You're not just any jester, though. You're a juggler of words, a spinner of tales, and occasionally a thorn in the side of the highborn. Your audience can range from the king himself to the lowest of peasants, and each expects something different. The king wants diversion from the ever-looming threat of political intrigue, while the peasant wants a laugh to forget that his daily bread is often more of an aspiration than a reality. Speaking of bread, the economy here is as unpredictable as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. 1/4 of a silver penny might not sound like much, but when the average wage for a labourer is about 2 to 3 silver pennies a day, every crumb counts. Now, let's talk economics, because nothing says good morning like a dose of medieval financial reality. The market you're hearing is the beating heart of Castilian life. Whether it's a loaf of bread or a skein of wool, everything has its price. And trust me, it's a price you're keenly aware of. A jester's income isn't exactly swimming in gold. You've got to juggle your finances with the same deftness you apply to those flaming torches or witty repartees. Here's a kicker. While the nobles might toss you a coin for a particularly clever jest, your real worth is in your ability to navigate these social waters. You're an entertainer, but you're also a mirror reflecting the follies of the court. You can say things no one else dares, as long as you wrap them in a cloak of humour. It's a delicate dance where one misstep could mean the difference between laughter and exile. The economic landscape you're tiptoeing through is a curious beast. Picture this. You're in a world where a loaf of bread costs 1/4 of a silver penny, and yet the king's treasures are measured in talents of gold. The disparity is enough to make your head spin, but hey, that's why you're here. To make sense of the nonsense, to bring levity to the levees, and to remind everyone that sometimes the fool is the only one speaking the truth. As you don your motley attire, remember that your role is as necessary as it is precarious. The court needs its jester as much as the baker needs his dough. You're the one who can speak truth to power, wrapped in the comforting guise of folly. The laughter you provoke is more than just a reaction. It's a balm for the tensions that simmer beneath the surface. But don't let it go to your head. You're just as likely to be mocked as you are to mock. It's all part of the game, and in Castile, the stakes are as high as the castle walls. It's time to embrace the day, to step into the market's chaos, and to remind the good people of Castile that even in a world burdened with uncertainty, there's always room for a jest or two. So, as you weave through the crowd, remember your dual role, entertainer and advisor, fool and sage. It's a balancing act, as delicate as a tightrope walk, one you've mastered through wit, charm, and a keen understanding of the human condition. And if it all goes sideways, well, at least you've got a few good jokes up your sleeve. So, as you're weaving through the market, ready to embrace the day, your mind is already racing ahead to the court of King Alfonso VI. By now, you're familiar with the fact that the court isn't just a place of luxury and power, it's a pressure cooker of ambition, alliances, and the kind of intrigue that makes a soap opera look like child's play. Mid-morning finds you polishing your routine like a knight sharpens his sword, prepping to perform for the king himself. A man whose name, by the way, echoes across the land like the clang of a church bell on a sleepy Sunday. Now, let's talk about King Alfonso X of Castile. The man's got a reputation as both a warrior and a lover, and his court is a microcosm of the kingdom's complex political landscape. Alliances here are as fragile as a house of cards in a windstorm. Picture a place where a misplaced word could topple your career faster than you can say trebuchet. It's into this den of diplomacy and deceit that you, the jester, step with your arsenal of witticisms and barbed humour. Your role? It's a delicate dance of jest and jesting, where every joke is a potential landmine. It's like being the only one allowed to call the king's prized hunting hound a mutt. You see, the jester holds a peculiar place in the court hierarchy. You're both insider and outsider, allowed to speak truths that others would dare not whisper. It's a legacy of medieval court culture, where humour was a tool as sharp as any sword and far more likely to leave a lasting impression. And speaking of lasting impressions, let's chew on the political stew simmering away in Castile during this period. The kingdom is a patchwork of territories, each with its own allegiances and grievances. Alfonso VI's reign isn't just about sitting on a throne, it's about juggling the disparate interests of nobles, clergy, and the ever-looming shadow of the Moors to the south. The 1340 Battle of Rio Salado is fresh in everyone's minds, a recent triumph against the Marinid Sultanate and the Nasrid Kingdom of Granada. It's the kind of victory that makes poets swoon and chroniclers reach for their quills, painting Alfonso as a heroic figure in the annals of history. But here's the kicker: while the chronicles may sing of glory, the reality is that this victory came at a steep price. The coffers of Castile? Not exactly overflowing. Wars aren't cheap, and the cost of maintaining an army could drain a kingdom's treasury faster than an overzealous tax collector can say, levy. It's your job, dear jester, to poke at these inconvenient truths with your sharp tongue and quick wit, all while keeping a careful eye on the king's mood. After all, the line between humour and insult is as thin as a hair on a monk's tonsured head. As you prepare for your performance, you consider the court's appetite for commentary on such matters. The court is a living, breathing organism, and its moods change as frequently as the tides. One moment, they're eager for tales of victory and valour. The next, they're whispering about the cost of such glory, the taxes levied to fill the royal purse, and the nobles' grumblings about their dwindling power and influence. Navigating this landscape requires the kind of deftness that only a seasoned jester can muster. Your performance is an intricate tapestry of satire and wit, woven with the threads of current events and historical context. You might jest about the king's prowess on the battlefield, all while subtly highlighting the burden of maintaining such a reputation. You might poke fun at the nobles' shifting allegiances, likening them to reeds bending in the wind. It's a high-wire act of humour and diplomacy, where every laugh is a victory and every groan a potential misstep. The political dynamics of the court are as complex as the tapestries adorning its walls. Each noble has their own agenda. Alliances shift with the seasons, and the king must navigate these treacherous waters with the skill of a seasoned mariner. It's a game of chess, played with real lives and real consequences, and you, dear jester, are the court's unofficial commentator, providing levity and insight with each well-placed quip. As you take the stage, the court's eyes are on you. The king leans back on his throne, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. It's showtime and the stakes are high. Your words must entertain, enlighten, and, if you're lucky, influence. Perhaps you'll remind the court of the recent victory at Rio Salado, using humour to underscore the sacrifices made by those who fought. Or maybe you'll turn your attention to the nobles, playfully chiding them for their ever-changing loyalties. In this world, words have power, and your role as a jester is more than just entertainment, it's a subtle form of diplomacy. Your performance is a reflection of the court's mood, a barometer of the political climate. And in a place where alliances are as fragile as the parchment they're written on, your clever commentary can sway opinions and influence decisions. It's a fine line you walk, balancing humour and diplomacy, but it's a line you've mastered with the grace of a tightrope walker. So, as your performance unfolds, remember that beneath the laughter lies a deeper purpose. You're not just here to entertain, you're here to provoke thought, to challenge assumptions, and to remind the court of the ever-present realities that shape their world. It's a complex dance of words and wit, and you're the star performer, navigating the intricacies of medieval politics with a smile on your face and a sharp quip at the ready. The court may be a place of intrigue and ambition, but it's also a place where humour can change the course of history, where a well-timed jest can illuminate the truth and inspire change. It's a unique position to hold, and one that comes with its own set of challenges and rewards. But for now, as the court erupts in laughter and applause, you know that you've done your job well. You've entertained, enlightened, and perhaps even influenced, all while keeping the delicate balance of humour and diplomacy intact. As mid-morning turns to noon, the court's attention shifts back to the matters at hand, alliances to forge, decisions to make, and the ever-present threat of conflict on the horizon. But for a brief moment, you've provided a respite from the weight of these responsibilities, a reminder that even in a world fraught with uncertainty, there's always room for a jest or two. And in the grand tapestry of history, your role, however small, is one that leaves a lasting impression. As the laughter in the court fades and the serious business resumes, you step back into the sunlit streets of 14th-century Castile, where your audience is as diverse as a medieval tapestry. The court may have its intrigues and alliances, but out here, it's all about survival and, if you're lucky, a bit of merriment to break up the monotony of daily life. The afternoon sun casts long shadows, and you, in your motley attire, are the embodiment of colour in an otherwise stark world. Let's talk about that costume of yours. It's not just an eye-catching ensemble, it's a badge of your profession and a tool of your trade. Those motley colours, the very definition of clashing, announce your presence long before your witty commentary reaches the ears of the townsfolk. Here, in the bustling streets, your costume is both a sign of folly and a clever disguise. It gives you the freedom to speak truths that others might shy away from, using humour as both sword and shield. It's this unique role that allows you to navigate the complex social structure of Castilian life. The townsfolk you encounter represent a cross-section of medieval society, from the struggling peasant trying to eke out a living to the prosperous merchant counting his coins. And let's not forget the beggars, their outstretched hands, a reminder of the ever-present poverty that clings to the edges of even the wealthiest towns. Your path takes you past a weary labourer, wiping sweat from his brow after a long day in the fields. You greet him with a jest about the sun being more relentless than a tax collector, and he chuckles despite himself. It's a small victory, a moment of levity in a life defined by toil and uncertainty. The average wage for a labourer is about 2 to 3 silver pennies a day, remember? And that's if you're lucky enough to find work. For many, the line between survival and starvation is as thin as a straw. As you continue your stroll, you pass a group of children playing in the dirt, their laughter a bright spot in the otherwise grim landscape. You pause to juggle a few stones, earning their applause and a few giggles. It's moments like these that remind you why your role is so vital. In a world where the plague is an ever-present threat and poverty is a constant companion, a jester's humour is a form of resistance, a way to push back against the darkness and find joy in the most unlikely places. Ah, the plague. Let's not sugarcoat it. The Black Death, as it's become known, is the spectre haunting the 14th century. It doesn't care if you're a king or a commoner, it takes all comers. It sweeps through towns and villages like a vengeful ghost, leaving devastation in its wake. The sight of a cart carrying the dead isn't uncommon, and the smell of sickness lingers in the air like a bad memory. You, dear jester, are not immune to its effects. But in times of crisis, humour becomes a lifeline, a way for people to cope with the unthinkable. Speaking of coping, let's talk social commentary. The jester's role has always been to hold up a mirror to society, reflecting both its virtues and its vices. It's a job that requires a keen eye and a quick wit, as well as the ability to read a room like a masterful chess player. Today, as you weave through the streets, you consider the class tensions simmering beneath the surface. The nobles may hold the power, but it's the common folk who bear the brunt of their decisions. A merchant, his cart laden with goods, grumbles about the latest tax imposed by the crown. You can't resist the opportunity to poke fun at the ever-increasing levies, likening them to a leaky bucket that never seems to fill. He laughs, a short, sharp bark, and tosses you a coin. It's a small gesture, but it speaks volumes about the role of humour in addressing the grievances of the time. In a world where speaking out can have dire consequences, the jester's jest becomes a powerful form of protest. The sun sinks lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the town. As you make your way back to the market square, you reflect on the day's encounters. Each interaction, each laugh, is a reminder of the jester's unique place in medieval society. You're more than just a source of entertainment. You're a voice for those who have none, a commentator on the human condition, and a beacon of hope in a world fraught with uncertainty. As the day draws to a close, the streets begin to quiet, the hustle and bustle of the market giving way to the soft murmur of evening. You, in your motley attire, are a part of this vibrant tapestry, a reminder that even in the darkest times there's always room for a jest or two. And as you prepare to head back to the court, to face the intrigues and alliances of King Alfonso the Ixth's first realm, you carry with you the knowledge that your role, however small, is a vital one. In the grand tapestry of history, the jester's legacy is one of resilience and resistance, a testament to the power of humour in the face of adversity. And while the court may be a place of power and prestige, it's the streets of Castile that remind you of the real heart of the kingdom, the people who live, laugh, and struggle in its shadow. So, as you take one last look at the bustling town, you know that tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities for laughter, and new moments of connection in a world that desperately needs them. As the sun dips behind the castellated walls of Castile, you find yourself drawn to the warm glow of a local tavern. Ah, the medieval tavern, where the floor is as sticky as the conversation is lively. This is the social hub of the town, where the ale flows as freely as the stories, and the air is thick with the aroma of roasting meat and the occasional whiff of unwashed humanity. It's here, amidst the clamour and the clinking of mugs, that you, our quick-witted jester, truly come alive. Let's clear up some common misconceptions. When we talk about jesters, many picture a fool in a floppy hat, a sort of medieval clown who exists solely for slapstick and shenanigans. But in reality, jesters were more akin to social commentators, using humour as a scalpel to dissect the absurdities of their time. They were the John Stewarts and John Olivers of the Middle Ages, except with more lice and fewer camera crews. Take the tavern itself, it's more than just a place to drown the day's troubles in a mug of ale. It's the medieval version of Twitter, minus the trolls and hashtags, where information spreads faster than a bard can strum a lute. Here, talk of politics and trade, rumours of battles won or lost, and the latest courtly scandal, all mixed together in a heady brew of gossip and speculation. Communication in this era is about as reliable as a one-legged horse, so a tavern is crucial for news, whether it's accurate or not. Now, speaking of ale, did you know it was a staple of the medieval diet? That's right, folks. Water wasn't always safe to drink, so ale was the beverage of choice. Safer and, let's be honest, more fun. In fact, the average medieval person might consume about a gallon of the stuff a day. It's not all drunken revelry, though. The alcohol content is fairly low, so you'd have to drink a barrel to get truly sourced. But tonight, you're not here for the drink, you're here for the people. The tavern's clientele is a cross-section of society, artisans, traders, peasants, and the occasional nobles slumming it for a taste of the common life. You're here to eavesdrop, to gather material for your jests, and maybe, just maybe, to plant a few seeds of your own. As you settle into a corner, you overhear a blacksmith grumbling about the latest tax hike. Noble lords are always squeezing the little guy, and it's your job to remind everyone that yes, the emperor has no clothes, and neither does his treasury. So why does this matter? Because humour is a form of resistance. In an era when speaking out against authority could land you in a dungeon. If you were lucky, jesters were the ones who could critique power without losing their heads. They wielded humour like a double-edged sword, cutting through the pretense and puffery that often accompanied medieval life. And while it might seem like all fun and games, make no mistake, every joke was a carefully crafted critique, a subversive act cloaked in laughter. Let's tackle another myth, the idea that jesters were mere entertainers, devoid of influence. In reality, a jester's quip could sway opinions and even affect policy. Kings and nobles, despite their power, were not immune to the sting of satire. A well-timed jest could highlight the absurdity of a policy or the folly of a leader, forcing those in power to take a hard look at themselves. Remember, it's easier to swallow a bitter pill when it's coated in humour. As the night wears on, the tavern becomes a melting pot of ideas. You hear whispers of Alfonso VI's latest campaign against the Moors, the murmurs of discontent surrounding the endless taxes to fund such endeavours. It's a reminder that even in victory there are those who pay a price. The Battle of Rio Salado may have been a triumph, but for the common folk it's a reminder of the burdens they must bear to keep the kingdom's gears grinding. Sitting in this dimly lit room, you consider the role of the tavern in the broader context of medieval society. It's easy to romanticize these places as rowdy dens of iniquity, but they're also where the seeds of change are sown. Here, in the murmur of conversation and the clink of mugs, you witness the undercurrents of resistance and hope that ripple through the fabric of Castilian life. It's a place where the highborn rub elbows with the lowly, if only for a night, highlighting the thin veneer of social divisions. And now, back to you, dear jester. Your role isn't just about making people laugh, it's about making them think. You're a conduit for the frustrations and aspirations of those who feel voiceless. Through your humour, you hold a mirror to society, reflecting both its beauty and its blemishes. It's a dangerous line to walk, but one that you've mastered with aplomb. After all, in a world where words can be as deadly as swords, your wit is your greatest weapon. As you spin your tales and crack your jokes, you remind those gathered that while the world may be rife with inequality and injustice, humour can be a powerful force for change. It's a reminder that even in the darkest times, laughter is a light one that can illuminate the path to a better future. And as the night deepens, you find solace in the camaraderie of the tavern, in the shared laughter that echoes off its walls. So, as you raise your mug in a toast to the motley crew around you, remember that while the court may have its intrigues and the streets their struggles, it's places like this, where stories and ideas flow freely, that hold the true heart of Castile. Here, among the clamour and chaos, you find a sense of belonging, a reminder that even in a world fraught with uncertainty, there's always room for a jest or two. And as the night wears on, you know that your role, however small, is one that leaves an indelible mark on the tapestry of history. As the tavern chatter begins to fade into the background, you find yourself pondering the legacy of jesters like you, those colourful, wry commentators of yore. Your role may seem like a relic from a dusty history book, but let's not kid ourselves. Your influence echoes through time like a particularly catchy tune you just can't shake. You see, jesters were the original purveyors of satire, long before late-night hosts and Twitter pundits made it trendy. And while the floppy hats and slapstick antics have been left in the past, the core of your craft, using humour to poke at power and illuminate absurdity, remains just as sharp today. Let's face it, the jester's legacy is a curious cocktail of myth and reality, with a twist of lime for zest. Sure, there's the romantic notion of the fool who speaks truth to power, armed only with a sharp tongue and a penchant for pratfalls. But beneath that charming veneer lies a more complex truth. You were the medieval whistleblower, the canary in the coal mine of courtly life. Your jests were more than mere entertainment. They were social commentary, a way to nudge the high and mighty toward introspection, all while keeping your head firmly attached to your shoulders. Consider this. In a world where straightforward descent often led straight to the gallows, being a jester was like walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers, except you were also juggling flaming torches. It was your job to highlight the emperor's invisible wardrobe malfunctions, using humor as your safety net. In an era when kings, like Alfonso X, ruled with a fist of iron and a pocketbook of gold, your barbs had to be wrapped in laughter to avoid being wrapped in chains. And let's not forget your role in shaping cultural norms. By lampooning the absurdities of your time, you helped society take a collective step back and question the status quo. With every jest, you pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable to say or do, challenging societal norms and, occasionally, even changing them. Your humor was a form of cultural currency, a way to influence public opinion in a world where information traveled slower than a snail on a sticky wicket. Speaking of influence, let's drop some names. Take Archibald Armstrong, the court jester for King James VI and I. This guy knew how to walk the line with finesse. Armstrong's sharp tongue earned him both favour and ire, a testament to the tightrope you walked. And then there's Will Summers, Henry VIII's favourite fool, whose presence was immortalised in literature and art, and who managed to keep his job and head through some of the most tumultuous times in English history. These jesters were the Renaissance's answer to the modern-day satirist. Think of them as the SNL of their time, minus the live broadcast. Now, let's turn our attention to the ripple effect of your legacy. Fast forward to today, and you'll find that the jester's spirit lives on in political cartoons, stand-up comedy, and late-night monologues. Satire remains a potent tool for social critique, wielded by those who dare to speak truth to power in a language that transcends time. It's no coincidence that the court jester's hat has morphed into the comedian's mic, each serving as a beacon of resistance against the absurdities of authority and the follies of human nature. But here's where we bust a myth or two. While it's tempting to view jesters as merry pranksters with a penchant for slapstick, the reality is they were more akin to political analysts with punchlines. Their humour was a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, used to dissect the complexities of power dynamics and societal inequalities with surgical precision. They were the unsung heroes of intellectual discourse, using laughter to cut through the noise and get to the heart of the matter. And as we wrap up this historical deep dive, let's not forget the voices of those who lived it. A 14th century chronicler once noted that the fool's wisdom is often visible to the wise, yet his folly speaks to the heart. It's a reminder that your jests were more than mere folly. They were wisdom cloaked in wit, a means of communicating truths that were otherwise unspeakable. So, dear jester, as you step back into the shadows of history, know that your influence lingers on. You were more than a figure in motley attire. You were a pioneer of satire and a champion of free speech in a time when both were rare commodities. Your legacy is woven into the fabric of modern entertainment, a testament to the enduring power of humour to challenge, illuminate, and inspire. And as the night draws to a close, let us toast to you, the unsung hero of history who proved that even the most humble jest can leave a lasting mark on the world. You're standing in the heart of Athens, and the sun is just beginning to peek over the Acropolis. The city is already alive with the chatter of merchants and the clinking of drachmas, a sound that's as comforting to an Athenian playwright as a pen scratching parchment. You step into the agora, the bustling marketplace, a place that's as much about politics and philosophy as it is about olives and pottery. It's early morning, but the place is already packed. The agora is the beating heart of Athens, a cross between a shopping mall and a town hall. You dodge a goat, because of course there's a goat, while keeping an eye on your money pouch. Those drachmas, the silver coins jingling in your pocket, are the lifeblood of this economy. A drachma might buy you a loaf of bread or a jug of wine, depending on how much haggling you're willing to do. And haggling, my friend, is an art form here. So, what's the deal with these drachmas? Well, each one is about 4.3 grams of silver, and they've been around since the 6th century BC. That's the kind of longevity even the Kardashians would envy. The currency is not just a local gig, it's got international clout. It's used throughout the Greek world and beyond, making it the ancient equivalent of the dollar. Trade is a big deal here, and Athens is the trade capital of Greece, thanks to a little something called the Piraeus, the city's massive port. Ships from all over the Mediterranean drop anchor here, bringing in goods and ideas that shape Athenian life. Now, as much as you love a good deal on some imported Egyptian papyrus, you're also here to soak up the political vibes. Athens is a democracy, and that's as rare as a quiet day in the agora. The idea of power to the people is still in its infancy and is being tested every day. The ecclesia, or assembly, is where decisions are made by the citizens themselves. Picture a massive open-air debate club, but with more togas and less decorum. Every male citizen over the age of 20 has a say. That's about 30,000 loud opinions trying to steer this ship called Athens. As you weave through the stalls, you pass a group of men animatedly discussing the latest plays. In Athens, the arts and politics are as intertwined as a plate of spaghetti. Not that you know what spaghetti is, but work with me here. Playwrights like you are deeply influenced by the political climate. You see, the theatre isn't just a place for entertainment, it's a forum for political commentary. It's where you can mock the rich and powerful, question the gods, and somehow still keep your head attached to your shoulders. Freedom of speech is a risky business, but it's also what makes Athenian drama so electrifying. You overhear an older merchant grumbling about the state of politics, and you can't help but smile. The more things change, right? This city is constantly in a state of flux, caught between old traditions and new ideas. The tension is palpable, and it fuels the creativity you and your fellow playwrights thrive on. Oh, and let's not forget the influence of the politicians, the strategoi, who are as much celebrities as they are military leaders. Pericles is the name on everyone's lips these days. He's the big cheese, the guy who's transformed Athens into a powerhouse. Under his leadership, the city has embraced the arts like never before, with festivals and competitions that give you the chance to showcase your work. But it's not all sunshine and laurels. The Peloponnesian War is rumbling in the distance, threatening to upend everything. You grab a handful of figs from a vendor, exchanging a few drachmas, and think about how interconnected everything is. The economy, the politics, the arts, they all feed into each other, creating a society that's as vibrant as it is volatile. As a playwright, you're right in the thick of it, drawing inspiration from every heated debate and every whispered scandal. The sun is rising higher now, and the agora is getting even more crowded. You can feel the energy in the air, that electric mix of opportunity and uncertainty. It's all part of the daily life of an Athenian playwright, and as you make your way through the throngs of people, you can't help but wonder what stories you'll tell next. But for now, there's a symposium to attend, and maybe, just maybe, some inspiration to be found in the bottom of a wine cup. As you wander out of the agora, figs in hand, your mind drifts towards the seductive, chaotic world of Athenian theatre, a realm where drama isn't just an art form, it's practically a contact sport. The sun blazes overhead, a reminder that it's high time to start thinking about this year's Great Dionysia, the most prestigious festival in Athens. Ah, the Great Dionysia. Forget your modern film festivals with their red carpets and paparazzi. This is the ancient blockbuster event, where playwrights like you get to strut your stuff in front of thousands. We're talking an audience of up to 15,000 citizens packed into the theatre of Dionysus, each one a critic with the power to make or break your career. Now, let's get one thing straight. This isn't just some village fair where you throw together a play and hope for the best. No, it's a full-blown dramatic competition, and the stakes are as high as the Acropolis. Each playwright submits a tetralogy, 3 tragedies and a satyr play, the ancient equivalent of a comic relief. Imagine the creative burnout. It's like writing a trilogy and then adding a Monty Python sketch at the end. The pressure is real, and it's not just about the glory. The victors walk away with a laurel wreath and eternal fame, a pretty sweet deal in an era where immortality usually involves a lot of mythological meddling. But let's not romanticize the solitary genius laboring away in a candlelit room. If you're picturing some tortured soul scribbling away in isolation, think again. The reality is a little more, shall we say, communal. The playwright is more like a modern film director, orchestrating a small army of actors, musicians, and chogois, the wealthy patrons who bankroll the whole shebang. There's no pulling a one-man band here. It's a team sport, complete with its own drama and politics. The Corregos, often a rich aristocrat, funds everything from costumes to special effects, and you better believe they're not shy about sharing their opinions. And speaking of logistics, let's talk staging. You're working with the bare bones of what we'd consider a theatre today. No cushioned seats, no fancy lighting. It's all about natural acoustics and the power of the human voice. The stage is a simple, circular space called the orchestra, and behind it stands the skene, a building used for costume changes and storing props. Props, by the way, are minimal. You've got masks, a few pieces of furniture, and maybe a fake sword or two if you're feeling fancy. The real magic lies in the storytelling and the actors, who double and triple up on roles faster than you can say, quick change. Now, about those actors. Have you ever tried projecting your voice to thousands of people without a microphone? Add masks that cover your entire face, and you've got a gig that requires a unique blend of talent and lung capacity. And here's a kicker. Everyone in the play is a guy. Ancient gender norms at play here. Even the most tragic of heroines are played by men, which must have made for some interesting interpretations. But hey, it's all about the illusion, right? Then there's the audience, a rowdy bunch who aren't afraid to express their opinions. Think of them as the original social media commenters, but live and without the anonymity of a keyboard. They'll cheer, they'll boo, and if they're really moved, they might just throw something. Your play is not just a script. It's an experience, a conversation with these citizens who are as much a part of the performance as the actors on stage. And let's not forget the judges. 10 citizens chosen by lot who basically hold your playwriting fate in their hands. If you think modern critics are tough, try impressing this jury who are quite literally judging your life's work in the space of a few hours. But before you can even think about basking in applause or ducking rotten fruit, there's the small matter of rehearsal. In the weeks leading up to the festival, the city buzzes with the sound of actors practicing lines, musicians tuning instruments, and you, the playwright, pacing around like a nervous parent on opening night. It's a mad scramble to get everything ready, and just when you think you've got a handle on things, someone forgets their lines or trips over their toga. Yet amidst all this chaos, there's a palpable sense of excitement. The Great Dionysia is not just a festival, it's a celebration of Athenian identity, a showcase of its cultural prowess. It's a time when the city comes together to laugh, weep, and reflect on the human condition. Sure, the logistics might be a nightmare and the pressure immense, but this is what you live for. It's a chance to hold a mirror up to society, to provoke thought and emotion, and maybe even sway public opinion. And if you can pull it off, you might just find your name etched into the annals of history. As the day wears on and the sun begins its descent, you make your way back through the bustling streets, your mind racing with ideas and possibilities. The city's life pulses around you, a constant source of inspiration and challenge. You know that tomorrow you'll dive back into the chaos of rehearsals and scriptwriting, but for now, you let yourself dream a little. Because in Athens, the cradle of democracy and drama, anything feels possible. You head back to your abode, where a modest lunch awaits, bread, olives, maybe some leftover fish if you're lucky. No grand feasts here, just sustenance to fuel the creative engine. But let's not dawdle on your menu, we've got bigger fish to fry, like the gritty underbelly of Athenian playwriting. It's time to strip away the glamour and look at what it really takes to put on a show in 5th century Athens. Spoiler alert, it's not all laurel wreaths and applause. First up, let's chat about money. Producing a play in ancient Athens isn't just a matter of scribbling lines on papyrus, it's a financial juggernaut. You see, the Great Dionysia is a state-sponsored affair, and while the city covers some costs, the heavy lifting is done by the Korgos. This is your wealthy patron, the sugar daddy of the Athenian theatre. The Corregos funds everything from the chorus's elaborate costumes to the musicians' fees. We're talking about an investment that could cost anywhere from 300 to 1,000 drachmas, depending on how lavish you want your production to be. That's a fortune when you consider that a skilled worker earns about a drachma a day. So, why do they do it? Why throw down a year's salary on what amounts to a cultural gamble? Here's the twist. Being a Corregos is a civic duty, a liturgy, as much a part of the social contract as paying taxes or serving in the military. It's a chance for the rich to flex their wealth and win public admiration. Imagine the ancient equivalent of a modern philanthropist sponsoring a public art installation. with the added bonus of strutting around town to widespread applause. You're not just investing in a play, you're investing in your legacy, your family's honor, and maybe a little political leverage on the side. Now, let's talk about you, the playwright. Sure, your name gets to ride the marquee, but don't think for a second that you're living the ancient Greek version of the Hollywood dream. You're more like a project manager juggling a dozen tasks while trying to keep your creative vision intact. The financial stakes are high, and the social stakes even higher. Your reputation is on the line every time an actor steps onto that stage. A hit can make you the toast of the town, but a flop? Well, let's just say the Athenians are not the forgiving type. And then there's the political minefield you're navigating. Remember, this is Athens, a place where satire is a spectator sport and political commentary is embedded in every verse. Your plays are not just entertainment, they're a form of public discourse. The audience expects you to tackle the big issues, to question authority, and to poke fun at the powerful. But step too far over the line, and you might find yourself in hot water, or worse, on trial for impiety. Just ask Socrates how that worked out for him a few decades from now. But before you think it's all doom and gloom, let's acknowledge the appeal of this high-wire act. There's a certain thrill in walking the tightrope between artistic expression and political subversion. The theatre is a place where you can speak truth to power, where the common man can see himself reflected on stage and question the status quo. It's a heady mix of adrenaline and ambition, and for those who can harness it, the rewards are monumental. Yet, let's not romanticize the solitary genius. As you scribble away, consider the chorus, those 12 to 15 performers who are just as vital to your play as the lead actor. They're not just background singers, they're a living, breathing narrative device, the bridge between the audience and the story. Training them is no small feat, a rigorous process that involves choreography, singing, and enough acting to make your head spin. And while we're at it, let's raise a cup to the actors, those unsung heroes who must transform themselves into gods and monsters with nothing more than a mask and their voice. It's not just talent on display, it's a feat of athleticism and endurance. As you chew on these thoughts along with your lunch, remember that the stakes of public reception are colossal. The Athenian audience is not just a passive observer, they're a critical component of the theatrical experience. Their approval can catapult you to fame, while their disdain can turn you into a cautionary tale. Think of them as the original Rotten Tomatoes, with the power to make or break your career in one afternoon. If your play resonates, it's like winning the cultural lottery, your name whispered in the agora and beyond. But if it tanks, well, you might want to consider a new line of work. Let's not forget the judges, those 10 citizens who hold your fate in their hands. Chosen by lot, they're tasked with scoring the plays, and their decision is as binding as the gods themselves. There's no appeal process, no second chances. It's a one-shot deal, and it can be brutal. But here's the kicker: winning isn't just about the glory. It's about securing your place in the cultural hierarchy, about proving that your voice deserves to be heard in a city that prides itself on its intellectual prowess. So, why do it? Why subject yourself to the financial strain, the social pressures, and the political risks? Because for all its challenges, playwriting in Athens is a chance to leave your mark on history. It's a chance to influence the public discourse, to shape the cultural landscape, and to engage with the deepest questions of human existence. In a world where the gods seem capricious and the future uncertain, the theatre is a rare space where you can wrestle with the big questions and maybe, just maybe, find some answers. As you finish your meal and prepare to dive back into the chaos of production, you can't help but feel a sense of purpose. The odds may be daunting, but the rewards are tantalizing, a siren call to every playwright with a story to tell. The sun is lowering in the sky, casting a golden hue over the city, and you know that tomorrow you'll be back at it, driven by the same passion that fuels every artist, the desire to create something that endures. In the world of ancient Greek theatre, the stakes are high, the challenge is immense, but the potential for immortality, priceless. As the sun continues its descent, casting long shadows over the marble columns of the Acropolis, you're reminded that the real drama in Athens doesn't just unfold on stage. It spills out into the streets, infiltrates dinner conversations, and shapes the very contours of public life. theatre in Athens isn't just an art, it's a cultural juggernaut, a force that moulds public opinion like a potter with a fresh lump of clay. Let's talk about the cultural impact of these plays. If you think today's media wields influence, ancient Athenian theatre was the original opinion shaper. Picture this. A single play performed at the Great Dionysia could resonate through the city, influencing the thoughts and actions of the citizenry. We're talking about narratives that questioned wars, mocked political figures, and even poked fun at the gods themselves. It's like a modern-day satire show, but with sandals and a chorus. Take Aristophanes, for example, who was as sharp-tongued as they come. His play Lysistrata, written in 411 BC, is a comedic gem that tackles the very serious subject of war. The plot? Women withholding sex to force men into peace negotiations. You have to admit, it's a bold premise, especially in a society where women were mostly expected to be seen and not heard. Yet, it wasn't just about laughs, it was social commentary wrapped in humour, a Trojan horse of ideas delivered with a wink and a nod. And this wasn't an isolated incident. Playwrights like Euripides and Sophocles weren't shy about turning their quills toward the establishment either. Their tragedies often explored themes of hubris, fate, and the moral failings of leaders. Through their stories, they held a mirror up to society, reflecting not just its virtues, but its vices. Sophocles' Antigone dared to question the authority of the state versus personal morality, a debate as relevant now as it was then. But let's not sugarcoat the reality. This wasn't just about noble ideals. Theatre in Athens was also a battleground of propaganda. The state had a vested interest in the narratives being spun on stage. Plays that supported the city's policies or bolstered civic pride often received more enthusiastic backing. It was a delicate dance between challenging the status quo and reinforcing it, much like trying to juggle flaming torches while riding a unicycle. The themes of these plays were as varied as they were provocative. War, power, love, betrayal, the gods' often questionable sense of justice, nothing was off limits. And while the tragedies offered a sombre reflection of human frailty, the comedies allowed the audience to laugh at their own follies. It was a cathartic experience, a communal therapy session where the citizens of Athens could confront their fears and fantasies in a public forum. And speaking of the public, let's not forget the audience's role in all of this. These were not passive observers. The Athenian audience was as much a part of the drama as the actors on stage. Their reactions could elevate a play to legendary status or consign it to the dustbin of history. They were the original influencers, the kind who could make or break a playwright's career with their cheers or jeers. But why did all of this matter? Why did theatre hold such sway over the public consciousness? The answer lies in the very fabric of Athenian society. This was a city built on the ideals of democracy and debate, where every citizen had a voice. The theatre was an extension of this civic identity, a space where ideas could be explored and contested in a way that was accessible to all. It was a forum for the people, by the people, where the great questions of the day were played out in dramatic form. Yet, let's not romanticize this as a utopia of free speech. The reality was far more complex. Athenian democracy was a double-edged sword, offering freedom with one hand while wielding control with the other. The same assembly that celebrated artistic expression could, and did, censor and punish those who stepped too far out of line. Just ask Aristophanes, who faced lawsuits over his pointed satire. Yes, the very plays that thrilled audiences could also land their creators in hot water, a reminder that the line between art and life was perilously thin. So, as the stars begin to speckle the Athenian sky, consider the legacy of this theatrical tradition. It was more than mere entertainment. It was a vital part of the social and political ecosystem, a force that could inspire change or reinforce the status quo. Athenian theatre was a grand experiment in democracy, one where the stage served as both a mirror and a magnifying glass, reflecting the city's soul while scrutinizing its flaws. As you ponder the day's revelations, there's a certain satisfaction in knowing that, despite the centuries that separate us, the timeless power of a good story endures. The themes that captivated the citizens of Athens' power, justice, love, and betrayal are the same ones that echo in our own lives today. And in those echoes we find a connection across the ages, a reminder that while the world may change, the human condition remains, gloriously and tragically the same. But hold that thought, because tomorrow the plot thickens. As you sit under the canopy of the Athenian night, the city humming softly around you, it's time to ponder the legacy of those towering figures of 5th century BC theatre. In a world where every other day could bring a new war or philosophical upheaval, these playwrights offered something timeless, a mirror to humanity's virtues and vices, clad in the garb of gods and heroes. While the marble of the Parthenon might crumble, the impressions left by these dramatic pioneers remain etched into the bedrock of storytelling itself. Take Aeschylus, the so-called father of tragedy. Spanning a career that included around 90 plays, though only 7 survive today, his work provides the blueprint for the dramatic tension that still captivates audiences worldwide. His innovation? Adding a second actor to the stage. Sounds simple, right? But this was like going from Pong to Fortnite in the evolution of narrative complexity. With this change, drama transformed from a monologue-heavy affair into a dynamic interplay of dialogue and conflict. Aeschylus's Oresteia trilogy is the oldest surviving example of such narrative depth, where themes of justice and revenge are woven into a tapestry of human emotion that still resonates. The man's contributions to drama are as foundational as, say, inventing the wheel or discovering fire. Essentially, civilization itself. And then there's Sophocles, who added yet another actor, turning the stage into a veritable party of psychological depth and moral ambiguity. His Oedipus Rex remains a masterclass in suspense and inevitability, a tragedy so compelling that Sigmund Freud named a complex after it. Yes, thanks to Sophocles, we now have a term for when someone has unresolved issues with their parents. It's a legacy that any playwright would kill for, metaphorically speaking, of course. Euripides, the rebel with a cause, saw the world differently. His plays often questioned the gods and societal norms, presenting characters that were decidedly more human, more flawed. In Medea, he explores themes of betrayal and vengeance with a rawness that can still unsettle a modern audience. His work was considered controversial in his time, challenging the status quo with a flair that was both provocative and, dare we say, ahead of its time. Euripides wasn't just writing plays, he was staging debates, inviting the audience to question their beliefs and perhaps see the world in shades of grey rather than black and white. But let's not fall into the romantic trap of idolizing these playwrights as solitary geniuses. Contrary to the myth of the lone artist, these men operated within a bustling hive of ideas, borrowing and building upon each other's work. It was an ancient version of a writer's room, a collaborative space where innovation thrived amidst rivalry. The competitive nature of the Dionysian festivals spurred them on, each seeking to outdo the others in a quest for glory and a lofty place in the annals of history. However, let's pause and consider the layers of fiction that have crept into our understanding of these figures over the centuries. The myths about Athenian playwrights are as rich as the plays themselves, steeped in romantic notions of divine inspiration and solitary brilliance. Yet, the gritty truth is that these men were as much a part of their society's machinery as the politicians and generals. They navigated the treacherous waters of public opinion, financial straits, and political pressures, all while crafting narratives that resonated deeply with their audiences. The romance of the tortured artist is just that, a romantic notion far removed from the collaborative, communal reality of Athenian drama. And let's talk about the ripple effect of their work. Fast forward a couple of millennia, and you'll find their footprints in the works of Shakespeare, Molière, and even in the screenplay of your favorite Netflix series. The structural elements they pioneered, plot twists, dramatic irony, character development, are the same ones that underpin modern storytelling. It's as if these ancient Greeks wrote the rules of the narrative game that we're still playing today. So, the next time you're binge-watching a series that keeps you on the edge of your seat, spare a thought for these ancient trailblazers who first showed us how it's done. And what about the enduring myths? Well, they say legends never die, and that's certainly true here. While the reality of Athenian playwrights was one of hard work, collaboration, and political savvy, the mythic image of the inspired genius persists. It's a testament to the allure of the romantic narrative, a reminder that we, as humans, are often drawn to stories that elevate rather than deflate our heroes. As you reflect on the day's journey through the world of Athenian theatre, you might realize that the legacy of these playwrights is as multifaceted as the city of Athens itself, steeped in history, full of contradictions, yet ever vibrant. Their work not only shaped their world but continues to influence ours, proving that while times change, the essence of storytelling remains gloriously unchanged. It's a comforting thought, one that connects us to the past, reminding us that the stories we tell are as much about understanding ourselves as they are about entertaining others. So, as you close the curtain on this day in the life of an Athenian playwright, take a moment to appreciate the profound impact of their legacy. These men didn't just craft stories, they forged a cultural heritage that endures, a testament to the power of the human imagination. And as the last embers of the day flicker out, you can rest easy knowing that while the world may change, the art of storytelling, its ability to challenge, inspire, and unite, remains a constant echoing through the ages.